That's a good look on you.
It's
Yeah.
a little rustic.
Yeah. Are you at the cottage?
No, but I haven't had any real office appointments, so I've been, I guess, just a little on the lazy side.
Ah, that's quite all right. And there's Dave Barth. That's good. All right. Well, we're getting up there now. We have a few more people. Okay, I'm going to welcome everybody to our meeting. As I said, might be a little bit short because our speaker doesn't seem to be here, but we'll go through as best we can. And given it's one of the last 2 weeks of July, I'm expecting that a lot of people are probably on holidays. I don't know if they've all got cottages, but there's no doubt holidays are going to be a little different this year. So I'm having to do my first meeting on behalf of Jack, who is just recovering from some surgery. So be patient with me as I go through this. I think I have my agenda correct for what we need to do. And I'm going to start with Everton with our traditional O Canada. I will say that we've had a little bit of a team spirit challenge here to have Rotarians tape O Canada. I think they thought after watching, some of the Broadway stars and, the symphony do it, they thought they could do it. So Everton has kindly recorded the Kitchener Westmount Rotary Choir doing O Canada.
Oh boy.
Congratulations!
Wow.
Yay!
You even sung it in French.
I don't
And
remember
they
doing the
sang
French
French
part. I must have had a
too,
couple too many.
Yeah, I heard the unedited version of that originally. It was not quite as seamless.
Well, we may have time today. Maybe when we finish everything else, I could play both of them.
Okay, yeah, we may have to do a flashback to the original version of that
I won't
song.
do that.
No.
But I do think that that's a stunning rendition that we should use for every meeting going forward now. There may even be, who knows, there may be a tour in your future. We'll have to compliment Todd on how well he directed everybody.
There's
All right. Sorry?
a lip syncing award.
The lip syncing award, yeah, or the dubbing award by Everton, one or the other. Okay, so thank you for O Canada. Laura, you're going to have to help me because you did. Where did Laura go? Oh, there she is. You did a few virtual meetings. Do we actually do toasts?
We didn't, but Jack, I believe, did last week or 2 weeks ago when he did his meeting.
I have nothing to toast with, so we're going to presume that we acknowledge Canada, the Queen, and Kitchener Westmount Rotary. Cheers. Oh, good. Bill still has some milk left. That's good.
He's got a big jug of water there.
Okay, good. All right. I do though have the member milestones because I figured out how to go find those. Thank you, Laura. And we have a number of birthdays that came through this week and next week. So Allison Scott's birthday was July 20th. Moira Taylor's birthday is tomorrow on July 23rd. And Neil Aitchison and Brad Enns share a birthday on July 30th. I'm sure that was strictly a coincidence, but both of them will probably be partying very hard next week. And then for wedding anniversaries, Don Wilcock and his wife, and for any of our new members, Don usually attends our Christmas party and is a long time member of the club. And he and his wife, Anne, are celebrating 59 years today. So that's a bit of a milestone. And Matt Graham and his wife, Poppy, are celebrating 16 years on July 31st. And then for club anniversaries, we have Todd Aitchison and Bob Kieswetter, both today, and both at 17 years. So that's a bit of also an unusual circumstance. So it sounds like those Aitchison people, they just like to share their special days. I'm going to move on to, I'm just looking to see, there's Kyle. Hi, Kyle, nice to see you.
Hello.
I'm looking here. We still do not have our speaker yet. So I'm going to actually ask Karen to introduce her special guest, Kathy Must, who is going to just speak to us for a few minutes. And it may end up that Kathy may be the only speaker we actually have today. So Karen, why don't you...
I will fill 45 minutes, Judy. How's that?
Oh, you won't, eh? Okay.
No, I don't have that much.
It's my pleasure to introduce Kathy Must. Kathy and I actually started at Horizon on the first together, I don't know how many years ago. So we got to know each other there when it was still Catholic Family Counseling. And we've kept in touch all these years through the different gyrations of jobs and wherever we've been. Kathy is now with Reception House, which is a settlement home, or I guess Kathy can explain better, but settlement for refugees coming into our area. And I asked if there was something that our Rotary Club could do to help them at this time, given, we're looking for club service projects, and also, we're limited in what we can do out in the community because of COVID. And she had this idea that they are working on, and I asked if she would share that with us. We talked about it last night at our meeting, to think about if the club would like to do this. So this project. So it really comes under the auspices of Everton's work on the board now. But since Kathy and I made the first contact with Kathy, that's why I'm speaking for it. And I'd also like to say that if we go ahead with it, I'd be happy to work with Kathy on this. It sounds a little bit like Spirit of Giving, and most of you know that I've had quite a bit of experience with that project over the years. So anyway, I'll give it over to Kathy now to explain more in detail what this project would look like for us. There you go, Kathy.
Thanks so much, Karen. And I'm really sorry I can't get my video picture up. I have something running in the background, so I'm really sorry about that. You see a very messy office here. I'm really pleased to talk, and actually Reception House was benefited also from the Spirit of Giving for Christmas toys for our children. A Reception House welcomes government-assisted refugees. We see over 300 families a year when they first come to Canada. They tend to have very low English, big cultural differences. So the transition, the adjustment process coming to Canada is a big one for them. In March, when we close the borders, all arrivals stop, not surprisingly. About 7,500 refugees have been identified to move to new locations, and they're all sent back to the camps. Not 7,500 to necessarily to Canada, but heartbreaking for those families to be on their way and then returned back. We're starting to open up again. but in a very different way. The newcomers will go through the 14-day isolation. There's a much more involved process, understandably, for that. We have not yet received a family, but we're expecting in the next few weeks to receive a family. And we will continue to see families for the rest of the year. The government gives us target numbers, 300 individuals, maybe 15 families. Those numbers have not changed, so we're expecting the same number of families. When they come now, post-COVID, they will go into isolation for 14 days. They will go into a hotel and stay there for the 14 days. After that, they will come to our temporary residence on David Street, 101 David, where they will stay until we're able to find them ongoing permanent housing. And during the period in 101 David, they go through orientation, they do health assessments. There's a whole lot of work that happens with them during that time. The first 14 days, they're in isolation, alone, with no contact in the hotel room. So we're thinking, and really inspired by the kind of work that the Rotary did around Spirit of Giving, of putting together welcome packages for the family, which could involve activities for the children, maybe activities for the parents, some personal care, deodorant, soap, lotions, toothpaste, toothbrush, and possibly some snacks as well, that we would give to them for that 14-day period. Helpful as entertainment, and just something to keep them busy, but also a tangible welcome for the individual. So be able to say, this has come from. We have one faith group who's working with the first family. But it's just it's such a wonderful way to say to the family, the community is coming to support you during this difficult time. So what it would involve would be collecting some of those, whether it's puzzles, picture books, for the children, for the parents, recognizing that most of the clients we serve do not speak English. Many of them are illiterate in their home language. So visual, tactile kinds of things are the most appropriate. Talking to some of our staff, they also said no paint, 14 days, kids in a hotel room, after the trauma and everything else. Paint is probably a disaster. It's not the kind of thing that we want to do. So we're putting together a list of the kinds of things that would be helpful. So that's our plan. We're not exactly sure when it would start. It could be, we're expecting in August and then throughout the fall. And if this is a project that would, sort of fit for the Rotary, you've been so supportive of us. I know Carl Cadogan and I joined a meeting, I think it was last year. We had the opportunity to have conversation about the work that we're doing. But if this is something that would fit, it would make an impact on the families in terms of the welcome they would receive. Karen, I'm delighted by your offer. I love working with you. And I think we can work through some of the logistics. So that's where we're at. I know if there are questions, comments.
Kathy, it's Judy. Could I just ask, how large are the families that are coming? It's usually a mom and a dad, and how many kids?
Most often we have a large family, so might have 4, 5, 6 children, a mom and dad. The first family is a smaller one, 2 children and a mom and dad. But what we would have, the target is 10 days before, 2 weeks before a family comes. We get information about the family, the size, the age, that kind of thing. So we get a little bit more information. As an aside, we're partnering with MCC to gather clothing for the families to have some sense of sizing, because they're coming with nothing and they can't go out into the community. So the clothing piece, we're partnering with MCC to get that covered. They tend to be larger families, Judy, and a wide span of youth.
Okay, thank you. Bill, did you have your finger up? Looking, oh, sorry, Bill Pegg. Did you have a question?
On me. Kathy, this might be a difficult question, but what would you say if you could pick one or two things that would be your most important items to receive? What would that be? And say in bulk.
I think probably the most universal, and I think primarily for children, because in a total number perspective, we see more children than youth because of the larger families. I think picture books and simple puzzles without language would probably be the most universally used piece. Toothpaste and toothbrushes. You know, if you're talking about a toy activity, the hotel may supply some lotions. We're not thinking that the hotel is going to treat it like a guest. So you probably need to have everything, the soap and that kind of thing. But the toothpaste, a toothbrush, and picture books and puzzles, probably the two most universal.
Okay.
Okay, so any other questions for Kathy? We've had a few additional members join since we started. So just to bring you up to speed, Karen introduced Kathy Must to us, and Kathy is with Reception House, which is just starting to plan for taking refugee families in again inside of COVID, and identifying for us some of the needs that they may have, and how we might be able to help with a bit of a program similar to Spirit of Giving by putting some packages together for them. So if I'm just checking here, I'm not seeing any other questions. People have to do this if you have questions. That's the only way I know. Karen?
So I think what I would do then, if there's no objection to moving forward with this, is sending out an information memo to the entire club and just getting some feedback. So if you're okay with that, that would be my next step. And then I would just continue to work with Kathy and how we roll this out and how we do it, either as individuals or as a club together, or however this is. But I'm just glad that she was able to be here to explain the details. Thank you for that, Kathy.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Karen, for the opportunity. We can work on a bit of a summary to this as well that they can circulate.
Okay.
So maybe
Sounds good.
we can do that. But thank you to everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything you do in the community as well, Rotarians.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Appreciate it. You've actually helped our meeting a great deal. So as I noted just before we got started, I'm still watching, and you know, we've had a few additional members join. Who we don't have today is our speaker. And so last night, because I was pretty sure when Jack asked me to host this, and then sent out the list of who had different duties. Todd, I'm assuming your dad's up at the cottage, and he was down as introduced the speakers. So I quickly emailed Andrew and said, can you send me the speaker bio, just so I've got it as a backup. And I'm just looking now at the speaker bio, and Troy, you're over there at the Concordia Club. You might want to look out the door to see if our speaker's actually there, because I'm looking at this invite and I'm thinking the speaker may have gone to the Concordia Club, because it doesn't say, please join us by Zoom. It says, please go to the Concordia Club. So it was done in June. There must have been some feeling that we might have been back at Concordia by then. So I have a feeling that by the time I reach Andrew, we're going to have a speaker who's going, where is everybody? Because he thinks we're actually meeting at this Concordia Club. So we are probably going to have to reschedule that one. And, you know, we can take a few minutes now and just catch up with everybody and see what's happening and see how everybody's doing, and find out if there's anything you need from your Rotary Club that we can help with. So I know Todd has been very busy in his backyard because I get to follow him on Facebook. How's things going for you and your business in COVID, Todd?
Yeah, things are a little crazy in insurance, as you can understand when you're dealing with, for example, today a restaurant client whose revenues are down 50%, and yet insurance companies seem to want to give renewals that are in some cases up, or, well, we'll give you a $200 lower premium than last year. It's kind of hard to justify that. So dealing with lots of emotions.
I'll bet. I'll bet. And John Vickery, I'm not sure how much real estate, commercial real estate is moving right now. What's your business like in the middle of COVID?
It is dead flat. So we have everyone from corporate clients to individual and entrepreneurial sorts that are postponing decision making. That had been the case until about 2 weeks ago. I confess that in the last 2 weeks, despite it being July and primetime summer, there at least has been a little bit more tire kicking, but no real activity happening at all. The only thing that is hot is investment sales and property, because there's still tons of people out there in the world that have money and want to invest in commercial real estate, but office space leasing, retail, as you can imagine, is just dead flat.
And probably a few people who think they're going to pick up a bargain right now, right?
Well, there's bargain shoppers, but there are far more buyers still in the market than there are sellers. I think if another shoe drops, and I do hope it doesn't, but fear it will, because I don't believe we've begun to see the end game on the economic impact of all of this with jobs, entertainment. I think we're still going to see a long recovery period, but
yeah, for sure. For sure. Hey, Paul Pupolo, haven't seen you for a while. How has business been during COVID? Nope, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm unmuted.
There
Thank
you go.
Just following up on what John was saying, interestingly enough, we were closing on 120 units here in the middle of COVID for our Barrack Castle condo plan. And we did get occupancy. We do have over 50% of the people that moved in. Interestingly enough, we were concerned about whether people were going to back out of the deals. And we had really nobody that backed out. And in June, we had actually 5 new sales that came in for the units there. So we're pretty well about 95% sold out on the units. So there was an effect in terms of getting all the approvals and getting it through. So that was another thing. I think the other thing, and I think John maybe can attest to this, what we're finding is a lot more investors now coming from Toronto. I think the suburban areas from the GTA, such as Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Guelph, Waterloo, up to Barrie and Innisfil, is becoming more and more commonplace. And secondly, right now, try to buy a cottage. It's like up 10 to 15 to 20 points compared to a while ago. People are now moving back out to Muskoka and out to Lake Huron and the lake area. So it's kind of a surreal world that's happening. But it's like John says, I think I agree. It's going to take a few more months before the whole thing settles down, and then we see where the lay of the land and that is off. Right now, office space, I would say it's going to be tough in the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it as that.
Dave Barth.
I just wanted to kind of add to what Paul was saying. I suspect what we're seeing, and a lot more of it, is that people have been working from home. They're finding out that they don't necessarily have to go to the office, that things are getting done still. And so you're going to start to see a lot more people say, hey, if I can make the bucks working for this corporation in Toronto and not have to live in Toronto, then I'll go someplace else, right? So as long as I have good connectivity, because I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing people kind of move into this area and all kinds of areas where they're going to be just working from home. So I think that might be a big trend that kind of just opens things up for real estate in these smaller areas. But it's not great for people who are earning their money in this community and trying to buy something in this community because the prices are still going up, because Toronto people look at our prices as a bargain. So yeah, just, I think that's a trend. I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. I know, John, you mentioned commercial real estate, but it'll be interesting to see how many businesses decide that, you know, they really don't need a footprint anymore and they can have all their staff work from home or work via Zoom. Troy, I'm curious, in terms of the landscape business, you're outdoors, you probably had no impact from COVID at all, right?
No, we were off for 5 weeks. We had everyone home when it was right in the midst and started there. So initially we were 5 weeks behind on all our work now. So it's been a big push to catch up. For our construction side, it's been a challenge because product is tough to find. As you can tell, if you want to go build a fence or a deck, you can't get wood. You can't buy pressure treated wood anywhere. Same for interlock pavers and stuff like that. If you want a specific stone that you might have picked last fall to do a patio, they might not make it right now. The suppliers have cut back on any sort of, like, their whole catalog, and now they're just focused on their most popular, which might not be what you want. So it's really hard to get product anywhere. All the different manufacturers are all having the same problem.
Yeah, you wouldn't have expected that necessarily as one of the impacts, is not being able to get product.
Yeah, and a lot of homeowners, like, they're not traveling, so they're doing work at their house, so they're buying products from Home Depots and the Lowe's. So our suppliers supply Home Depot and Lowe's with a lot of more, like, lower end product, and that's taking over their business because Home Depots and these guys are buying so much from them that's where their product's going, and not necessarily going to landscape shops that need the stuff. So it's a real challenge getting anything to site.
Well, that's an interesting impact that I don't think we might have thought about. So I'm looking at Kyle there now. Kyle, I'm thinking that the work has not slowed down for you because of COVID.
Yeah, the work, I mean, the work never slows down, probably because of COVID. I mean, I'm a little bit removed from the front line, but as you can tell, probably from the media and probably the umpteen number of news reports, there's a lot of trepidation and scrutiny over police right now. So yeah, business has not slowed down in the least. And I think that, yeah, I mean, only time will tell with a lot of these ideas of defunding the police and what that looks like down the road will come to fruition. I think that there's a lot of people, and maybe a lot of the general public doesn't know necessarily what frontline police officers are dealing with in terms of people with mental health issues or substance abuse issues, and people forget that we're kind of wouldn't say the last line of defense. Sometimes we're the first line of defense when when there's violence or something like that, but we're 24/7, 365 days a year. And so we're dealing with people at 2 o'clock in the morning who they might have substance abuse issues or mental health issues, but they also can be violent. And so and I think if you asked a lot of police officers, they'd be more than open to having social workers or some other means take some of those calls, but you just need to make sure that they're trained and prepared to what they're going to be involved in, because I can tell you from my experiences, it's dealing with somebody who's on bath salts at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's you can talk to somebody for 30, 45 minutes to 2 hours, but at some point there needs to be a decision made if the person's going to be moved along, if they're trespassing or if they're committing a crime. So it's yeah, I mean, I won't get into it too much, but it's an interesting time for policing. I can tell you that much.
Has it been additionally stressful for the folks you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little bit different. I'm in training, so I mean, I see the members as they come through. We had to basically suspend. We had to suspend training come March, like training for all our members. And we've kind of restarted it again in the last month or month and a half, just because we really have a need to do it. Because what happens is if the government, we have basically like the government said you're not going to have to do kind of annual training because of COVID. But at some point, the government will waive that and say, okay, you're going to have to have all your members requalified. And so if we stopped for, if we stopped for 2 or 3 months, we wouldn't be able to catch up everybody by the end of the year. Like Toronto or a Toronto Police Service or a York, they'd be 400 or 500 members down, and they just wouldn't be able to do it. So getting back to your question, yeah, I mean, I think, talking to the frontline officers, I mean, some of them they're very optimistic, and we have a lot of new members on the front line. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I would say so. It's definitely affected them. I mean, there's definitely a wellness point to it, and the additional requirements of the frontline officer are enormous. Dating myself, I've been doing it for 19, 20 years. Getting on the job as a frontline officer is crazy. The amount of stress, the amount of things that are required from a state paperwork standpoint, and the liability and kind of the oversight. Whether we have a lot of oversight bodies that examine policing, and quite frankly, you have everybody and their mother and father has a phone and will record what police are doing. So it's it definitely affects the frontline officer. It's definitely changed.
Well, there's no doubt that 2020 has been an interesting year for two purposes, both for the COVID and for the social unrest that's been happening, which in some ways, many different pundits have been saying, probably has been born out of some of the anxiety and some of the stress of COVID, and the fact that people have been so, so tied down, but also because they feel they have a cause that they want to move on. So challenging times for sure. Dave Barth, what's happening in the rest of the world? I mean, your whole title is World Accord.
Yeah.
So everything about the rest of the world.
I know something about the countries that we're in. So what we're seeing is that there's getting to be more desperation out in the world. And I think in terms of, when you take a look at the amount of food, I guess, that's generated on a global basis, 70% of all the food generated globally is coming from your smallholder subsistence farmers, right? It's not big agribusiness. And the smallholder subsistence farmers, they're the ones who are in trouble the most right now, because they just don't have the deep pockets to be able to weather the storm. And they can't get their products out to market. That's an issue. And in some cases, they end up, because we've gotten to the spot where people are trying to specialize because they want to be able to, feed a market. And so it's kind of like what we've seen here in the past, where we got away from the family farm, where the person had wheat and corn, and you had chickens and pigs and a few cows, right? So you kind of have that whole amount of, you can look after yourself and you can sell some. And then we got to the spot where, no, I'm not going to have any of that stuff. I'm just going to grow wheat. And then you kind of fall prey to the markets. And in the developing world, as they do this type of stuff, when their market is not there for their beans, then that's all they have is beans. And so there's some informal economies that are opening up. There's more bartering that's going to have to happen between neighbors and whatnot. But because markets are closed, in Honduras, for example, people can only travel once every 2 weeks, and it's based on their ID number. So you can't be on the roads at all in the country unless it's kind of like your date out of a 2-week period to be able to travel. And we're also seeing that when people get to a spot where they're hungry and they start to eat their seed. And the difference between seed and grain, if I take a look at, say, beans, for an example, as a staple all around the world, they take their beans and they inspect them. And the most perfect beans are the ones that you're going to gamble your life on and put in the dirt next year. right? We tend to want to eat the most perfect ones and kind of like we'll do something else with the ones that aren't perfect. But the subsistence farmers take the very best, and that's your seed for the next year, and they eat all the broken and chipped ones. But when things get really bad, then they end up having to eat their seed. And then they don't have anything to put in the ground next year. So we're seeing that hunger is going to be an issue that's growing. As a matter of fact, hunger has been on the increase for the last 2 to 3 years, and same with poverty. So we saw a decline for like 15 years. We saw a nice decline coming down of poverty and hunger. In the last 2 years, we started to see, because of prices, that hunger started to climb back up as being a bigger issue year by year. And what we're seeing right now is it's going to get worse globally. So that's the one thing. The other thing, of course, is that charities in general in Canada are under tremendous pressure, because there's greater demand and there's less supply of resources for the charities to be able to meet the demands with. And so the charitable sector as a whole is in pretty serious trouble, I think, and will be for the next, who knows how long COVID's actually going to last. So I think, ourselves as well as many other organizations are worried about that, second wave that's going to happen. So there's so much up in the air right now. We really just don't know. But globally, hunger is an issue, and globally, the COVID has really just started to hit in a lot of the poor countries. And one of the reasons that is because they just don't have as much travel around. So when it first came to the States, and you had your very first cases that landed in Seattle or whatever, because of the mobility of the people, it just spreads like wildfire. Whereas in Honduras, it's kind of like, we can basically shut off our little village and kind of slow stuff down. And eventually you get a case in there or two and things kind of go crazy again. But so, I mean, most of the world, I would say, is still at the beginning of their curve. And we're hopefully we're over our hump and down the other side. And if we don't have another wave, we'll be okay. But, the idea of opening up the doors for travel and doing that kind of stuff for the rest of the world, it's not going to be very fast, I don't think. They're just kind of getting hit pretty hard right now. Certainly in Nepal, they haven't kind of reached their peak yet, and they're just starting to reach their peak, I think, in Honduras. So I'm not sure about the stats for Salvador and Guatemala, but it's pretty challenging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chuck Thompson, how have you been managing through all of this? You have to unmute.
You can access it pretty easily there, Chris. If you go back.
Nope.
There
it goes.
Are we on now?
You're on now. Yeah.
Okay. No, I've been exploring the back roads of Waterloo region and environs. Read a lot of books, and I keep watching CNN and the news down south, and it makes me angry. But other than that, no, I've been doing fine as a retired person. But
as long as you're staying out of trouble.
Oh, just barely.
Okay. Okay. What about Bill Green? He's another retired guy who is probably not staying out of trouble.
Probably thanks in part to you, Judy.
Yeah.
The first little while when we were all shut down was a pretty big change, even for retired people. So I think that's what I see as still the biggest challenge, not just for myself, but for extended family and especially people in assisted living or nursing homes is the loneliness caused by the isolation. And even now that we're starting to open up the rules around visiting people in assisted living and nursing homes are still very restrictive as they need to be. But people living in those situations are at a higher frustration level, I think, than the average person, just because of the loneliness. And in fact, in our recent issue of the Rotary magazine, there was an article about that. And so I'd commend that all of you who haven't yet cracked the cover on that. But I've been doing some volunteer work, both for hospice and Parkwood Mennonite Home. And so that's kept me busy somewhat. It's
Out of trouble. That's good.
yeah.
That's
And
good.
I think both Bill Peg and I are missing baseball and frustrated by that. So that's normally would be our very busy time right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kathy Levies, how has it been for your client base? Are they okay?
Yeah, we have, as you probably know, 11 group homes, 2 of which are children's homes. And 2 of those homes, we support respite families, which of course, since mid-March, we've not been able to provide respite for those families in the community. We just recently entered into a partnership with the YMCA, and they're building on Herbsville Road, where we're able to support 2 children each day, 9 to 3, Monday to Friday, and 2 adults in a separate part of the building in order to meet the needs of families who are really needing that break from caregiving for their either their child or their adult family member who are still living at home. And then, of course, we're also providing respite on Saturday and Sunday as well for 2 additional adults, because we do have ministry service targets that we need to achieve, although the ministry program supervisors have certainly not had any level of expectation in terms of those service targets, but we are endeavoring to meet those through the summer months and to provide support to families. The really interesting piece that has affected developmental service agencies across the province is that all of our sites or locations have been, and our work has been deemed essential, and yet our workers are not deemed to be essential workers. So it's a really mixed bag and a mixed message that's being provided. We are really pleased that we were deemed to be essential because, of course, we've not been able to take a break throughout COVID-19, and all of us at the office are working virtually from home. We take turns going into the office 1 day a week, but it's been a very interesting time, and we're looking at across the developmental service agencies, locally and also provincially, looking at different ways that we're going to provide support to people moving forward in the future in this new era of COVID-19, because as we've all been saying, it's not going to go away anytime soon, and we have to look at new ways of providing services to people in community. But just a little teaser, what's coming up in the fall is we'll be doing a presentation. Our agency, along with Menno Homes and St. Paul's Lutheran Church, have formed a partnership to build an affordable housing project at the corner of Bridgeport and Lancaster. And that construction project, while delayed 3 weeks, is underway. And we're looking to make use of 10 apartment buildings for people we support in community and those who are on the wait list. There's over 530 people, adults waiting for homes in their community. And our space is going to be a community space and a community kitchen that's going to be made available not just for people we support, but the broader community. So there's a little teaser of, and we'll be sharing, Dan Dreger and I will be sharing that project coming up in the fall to the Rotary Club.
Excellent. Good. Good. Well, speaking of getting back to normal, and we're almost done our meeting here, so it's been actually kind of interesting to hear how everybody's managing and been impacted by what we're going through right now. But the new normal, Everton, is everything happens electronically and everything happens by Zoom, and we've all become quite technologically expert, apparently. So you have nothing to do now, right?
I can only laugh. No, yeah, we have lots to do.
I'll bet you do. I'll bet you do. From everything I've heard, everybody in the world wants to get onto the internet all at the same time, and all virtually. So there will probably be some takeaways that we will learn from this as we go forward about probably even how we continue to have people able to join us by Zoom or whatever, even when we do get to go back to the Concordia Club and have a regular face-to-face fellowship type of event. I'm going to close it off now. I'm going to have to get hold of Andrew and find out what happened to our poor speaker, who is probably still at the Concordia. But thank you all for sharing what you've been going through, because I think it's interesting for all of us to understand how this current situation we're in has been impacting everybody just a little bit differently. But to what Bill was saying and what Kathy was saying, we do know that for an awful lot of people, it is about being lonely and not having anybody to come see them. And for another whole group of people, it's about their caregiving duties and how they can't ever get away from them anymore and how they get no break from them. And both of those situations are ones that we probably want to think about how we can help as Rotary at some point in the future. So thank you, everybody. I think for the good of Rotary, we're going to say we're done for today. And if Jack asks, you tell him I did perfectly, okay? Thanks, guys.